wherever you are listening to our show, thank you for joining us this morning on the Basketball Show. I'm your host, Paul Sir. Pleased to be joined by our show's producer, Ryan Reed. Ryan, how you doing?
First and foremost, happy International Women's Day. Shout out all the women in our lives that make that do so much things for us.
Absolutely. It's a marvelous day. I thought the spot leading into this show was extremely well done. And one of the things we're going to be doing during this month is every week we're going to focus on and feature at least one female guest on our show, because the impact in our sport of basketball is huge. And it's been it's been great to watch the growth of women's basketball over the last couple of years. And actually, we're going to delve into that later in the show, too, as we talk about the WNBA and some of the controversy swirling around Caitlin Clark once again. But before that, let's go, first of all, to our poll question.
What's the most likely NBA final this season? The Lakers versus the Celtics, the Cavs versus the Thunder, the Lakers versus the Thunder, or the Cavs versus the Lakers? I think some people might be upset that we didn't put the Nuggets in at all.
Well, that's all right.
But if you really feel that way, text in about it, reply to the Twitter, something like that, and we'll give you a shout. But I think it's probably fair to say those two from each conference are the favorites. Right? They're also both the 1-2 seeds, so it's not like we're completely out to lunch.
Yeah, well, not completely out to lunch, and not like we're reinventing plutonium either. So we're just kind of going with the low-hanging fruit. By the way, our text line is 1-833-401-1440. Again, 833-401-1440. Text in your questions, your thoughts, your outrage, your opinions. We want them all. So we'll look forward to hearing from you over the course of this very good show. We have tremendous guests today, as we always do. We take a lot of pride in the guests that we have on the Basketball Show. In our first segment, we're going to have on Mike Decourcy. He's been a longtime writer for Sporting News down in the U.S. He's at TSN Mike. Mike's been on the show many, many times, and nobody's better at breaking down the NCAA than Mike Decourcy is. So we're real excited to be talking about the looming March Madness, and we'll focus mostly on men's March Madness this week. Next week, we're going to focus on women's March Madness. Second, at 10:40, we're going to have Mike Morreale. He is the co-founder of the CEBL. He is a tireless worker. And Mike, for all those who know him, certainly know he was a great CFL player, a great CFL broadcaster, but he's taken all of those skills and applied them to the growth and development of now the CEBL now going into its 7th season. And I'll tell you, there is not a more tireless worker than Mike Morreale. At the top of the hour, we're going to have on Tori Hill. Tori is the first-year head coach at King's University here in Edmonton. Tori took over for Brian Anstice, who recently passed away, who helped take a program that was in just the bottom of the barrel and helped build it up, and now has passed the torch on to Tori, and Tori has done a great job. They had an outstanding season, so we look forward to talking with Tori at 11 o'clock, and then we're going to talk tons of NBA. We're going to do our old school segment in our last segment. Going to talk about Bill Russell, talk about low-hanging fruit in terms of talking about old school impact players. We'll talk about Bill Russell. But let's now go to 3 from Deep as we get our show started today. All right. What do these numbers, Ryan, have in common? And we'll attach first ever 30, 20, and 20. What do those numbers mean to you?
Not much until last night. You just mentioned it. First time in history, Nikola Jokic dropping that. The crazy stat for me from that is he had 2 triple doubles. So he hit a triple double with like 11 minutes to go in the third quarter, and from that point on, he got another triple double.
What do you mean by that? Explain.
So he had 13, 10, and 10. He hit that mark with 10 to go in the third quarter. Then he did another triple double after. Like if you separate it into 2 games. If you separated the game,
my God,
he had 2 triple doubles.
Oh my God, you have taught me something, boy! Oh boy, I didn't go to math class. I guess you did. That's 2 triple doubles in the same game. It's unbelievable. What he did last night is unbelievable. But the guy's averaging a triple double this year. But when you look at his numbers, he's also in the top 5 in steals, top 5 in 3-point shooting percentage, and that's as a volume three-point shooter.
He's also winning. Remember when Russell Westbrook did it? They were good, but they were not incredible. And Jokic is the team is very good.
Oh, the team's very good and getting better, thanks, of course, primarily to him. But yeah, the accomplishment of 30-20-20 is unbelievable. But like last week when we talked, one of the writers I like following was talking about the MVP race. And last week, for the first time in a long time, this particular writer had bumped Jokic ahead of Gilgeous-Alexander. But what does Gilgeous-Alexander do this week? Goes out and has his fourth 50-point-plus game in the last 19 games. So, and the Thunder keep on winning. If it weren't for a ridiculous comeback by the Minnesota Timberwolves, they, like the Cleveland Cavaliers, would also be undefeated since the All-Star break. Like, it's just remarkable. Now, I had a chance to watch Oklahoma City this week, and I watched the 50-point game. And so often you hear the term surgical precision as it's applied to sport. Like a great passer, a great quarterback will throw with surgical precision. I'll tell you what, Gilgeous-Alexander plays with surgical precision. He slows the game down, and it's almost hard to relate to how easily now the game comes to him, because he just carves up the defense, not just his individual defender, but the team defense of the other team.
It isn't, as you mentioned, it's ridiculous. Another thing I wanted to touch on quick for the Shea versus Jokic debate was the fact that and going into last night, the odds were minus 700 for Shea to win MVP and plus 400 for Jokic to win MVP. After that performance from Jokic last night, it's been changed to Shea minus 350 and Jokic plus 230. So Jokic jumps up 170 points and Shea jumps back. He halves his result and jumps back 350 points. After one game.
You know what? I was reading, I read a great article. I was reading the same writer talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he said if this was any other season, he'd be the clear favorite to be the MVP this year. But he's not. He's in third, but it's a distant third, way, way down. So when you've got two players like this, I'd have a hard time recalling when there has been a year, and if anybody can think of a year, text us at 833-401-1440.
What about that Westbrook year we just were talking about when he had triple-doubled and Harden was winning all the games, but he was like 36 a night?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good comparison, actually.
Yeah, actually, he wasn't. I don't think he was 36 a night, but you remember, it was a memorable year for me, at least. Like
it was a memorable year, but here's the thing. Neither team...
I think they were the 4 or 5 seed, actually.
Yeah, neither team was doing what Oklahoma City's doing and being carried like Jokic has carried Denver through the whole season. So, but it's a good comparison. It's a valid comparison. And if anybody else has any recollection of when they thought similarly that there were two really difficult choices for MVP, but I've got perfect solutions today, Ryan. You know, I'm just full of solutions today. And the solution is, if there ever was a year where you would have a co-MVP, for God's sakes, this is it. Like, I don't know how you do that because it's all voted on, but if there were ever a way, sports writers, whoever is voting, make sure you coordinate to make sure these guys get an equal number of points, because how can you not give the MVP award to both of them? How can you say one is more impactful? Now, you could say, actually, that Jokic is clearly the MVP candidate because no other team, with the exception of the Milwaukee Bucks, relies so heavily on the outstanding performance of one player. And the difference between Jokic and Giannis is those gaudy assist numbers. Those are just off-the-chart, ridiculous point guard assist numbers.
And to be fair, Giannis, to counter his advantage on Jokic, is his prowess defensively.
100%. You're right. And so you have to, you cannot in any way diminish the contribution of Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee. and how great he is. So let's just frame this. Jason Tatum is a distant fourth and having a phenomenal season statistically. In fifth place again this week is LeBron James. And watching the Lakers, I'll tell you what, it's unbelievable. Take the age out of it. He's just playing great. He's just absolutely playing great. What was interesting the other night when I watched the Lakers play, when they had to come back and win, it was interesting to watch how Doncic plays. I mean, we've joked about it a bit here, and one of the jokes I thought of is who would win a foot race between Jokic? This is the irony. Who'd win a foot race, a sprint between Jokic and Doncic? It would be the slowest 100-yard
I think
dash.
I'd still take Doncic, though.
Yeah, in like at a 100-yard dash at 18 seconds to run the 100. I mean, he is, and you watch him on defense, honest to God, he looks like a YMCA defender. Upright, standing, arms down by his side, just kind of watching the ball, moving around. And once in a while,
I want to defend him. I want, no pun intended, I want to defend Luka here.
Yeah.
So since February 1st, Luka Doncic has the second best defensive rating of any player in the NBA.
How is that calculated?
It's so his defensive rating, I think I will double check this later, but it's 105. So it's when you were on the court, if you were on the court for the entire game, how many points would they score on you?
100%.
If there was all you guarding, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So based on that, he's actually, I think he's competing on defense compared to past years. LeBron's fourth in that metric since February 1st.
40-year-old dude.
40-year-old guy, fourth in defense. Luka's second. I will obviously say like raw ability. Luka Doncic probably isn't to the same level as some of the other defenders, but I think he's competing to a level he wasn't in Dallas defensively because he has a guy like LeBron that is better than Kyrie to rely on offensively and in the flow of the offense.
Fair and valid points, and I know how much fun you have being the counterpoint guy here, and that's great. I love it. No, and I absolutely love it. A couple of things. I'm poking fun, but I mean this in all seriousness. Great basketball does not rely on any one set of factors. A, athleticism. B, length. C, all the metrics that you can talk about. That does not make a great basketball player. It's a way to measure performance. It has its place. But great basketball players play basketball at a level both in terms of what you can measure statistically and what are intangibles that you can't teach. And both Jokic and Doncic, I think, are great examples, and I hope also great role models for kids who aren't the fastest and the biggest in their positions. It's developing your skills, becoming a great player in all facets of the game. Those are the players that can succeed at any level. And I think that Doncic and Jokic are very much that way. The same with Giannis Antetokounmpo. He handles the ball like a point guard, and he's 6'11". Like, developing your skills. And I'm going to make a comment later on about basketball in Edmonton because I've been following the statistics about our post-secondary players that are succeeding at a high level south of the border. They're all from down south. They're either from Calgary or they're from Raymond, Alberta. They're not from Edmonton. Ben Crickey had a great year last year, and there's certainly a lot of great players playing for the Pandas, the Bears, in the ACAC, and in other colleges and university. But I would challenge the Edmonton basketball community to start looking inward a bit about how your kids are getting trained and how they're being taught, because we need to develop a higher level of accomplished player coming out of high school, going into the post-secondary, because clearly down in Calgary, they have an edge on us because Yvonne Edgem, Player of the Year in the WCC, Delaney Gibb, Freshman of the Year in the Big 12, Nate, I can't believe it. I've just drawn a blank. University of Calgary guard, Player of the Year in Canada West. Calgary, University of Calgary, heading to nationals, beating UVic, top-ranked team in the country recently.
Nate Petrone, is it?
Nate Petrone, yeah, Nate, a great player. And his running mate at Mount Royal, get this, Mount Royal had Nate Petrone and Holt Tomey in their backcourt 3 years ago, and Nate transferred to the University of Calgary, and now Holt, who is the leading all-time scorer at Mount Royal, will be playing for the University of Alberta Golden Bears next year. But they're Calgary kids. So I really challenge Edmonton, and I have some fairly strong opinions, and I'm going to be getting a roundtable together. And once March Madness is over, we're going to talk about how kids are learning how to play and what opportunities they're being provided, but what kind of examples they're being given in the basketball community. Most of it's good. I don't want to sound like I'm going to be overly critical, but there are some things that I think really, really deserve an opportunity to talk about. Dallas, it's like Mount Vesuvius blew up in Dallas and absolutely consumed the Mavericks.
Someone said they traded Luka and God sent the 10 plagues of Egypt to them.
It's pretty Old Testament what's going on. You cannot make up that Anthony Davis comes over with no draft picks, and I think it was Chrissy was the other kid that came over. Not a particularly impact,
He's been good in Dallas.
He's been good. Yeah. No, he's a good player. He would have been a good
But he's not exactly Luka Doncic, as he said.
But he's not Luka Doncic. And also, if you had Davis, Chrissy, and a bunch of draft picks, like who were they talking about last night on the air? Like with Utah.
Bronny James?
Oh. Utah. Oh, yeah, no. That's another thing. We'll talk about that later with Stephen A. and LeBron's chit-chat on the sidelines the other night in L.A. against the Knicks. But, like with what you've got in Dallas is just an unmitigated disaster. Where I was going is like Utah has 1 million picks over the next few years. So they've done the ultimate tank where they have just, sold the farm to bring draft picks in like OKC did, and then hope to make a couple of key moves along the way that over the next few years, and a lot of teams have gone this way, to rebuild through the draft. Raptors are an interesting conundrum. They tried to lose against Utah last night, but quickly, and Scotty Barnes would have none of it. They rested. And this is something, too, that really ticks me off. There's 19 or 20 games left. You're tanking by not playing your starters during a game. You're running this like an intramural.
I guess that's the Cooper Flag effect, I guess, right?
It is. It's you know what? It's the Cooper Flag derangement syndrome. We'll talk about the Donald Trump derangement syndrome.
Is that medically coined now?
I think so. Well, it should be. I think I've just coined it. I better trademark that today. But there is a derangement syndrome because, my God, think if the Raptors got Cooper Flag, how that changes everything.
They add Brandon Ingram and Cooper Flag next year. It's not a bad. That wouldn't be bad at all.
What kind of a team would you have? And again, we go back to, and we'll talk about this with our next guest, Mike Decourcy. But we'll talk about what the talk of the deep draft. What does that actually mean? So we're going to take a break right now. Great first segment. We're going to come back with Mike Decourcy. You're going to want to listen to this guy because Mike knows it inside out as well as anybody from sporting news. So take a break, go get a cup of coffee, and join us here back on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Welcome back to the Basketball Show on this fine Saturday here on your sports leader, Sports 1440. I'm Paul Sir along with Ryan Reed, and we're pleased to be joined now by our next guest, Mike Decourcy, an old friend. Mike, welcome back to the Basketball Show.
Paul and Ryan, great to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you as well. Madness is upon us. A lot of conference tournaments have already started. A lot more get underway. Certainly the big boys are getting underway through the course of this week. And I'm talking, of course, ACC, Big Ten, etc. So, Mike, if you had a comment on the overall basketball season, top to bottom, in terms of quality in this new era of freedom of movement across teams, NIL money, what would your 30,000-foot opinion be of this NCAA season?
Well, I think it's been a blast. I hear a lot of complaints about the player movement and that sort of thing, but I look around pretty much every sport that I see, and player movement is a constant. It happens everywhere. Trade deadline comes in the NHL, and players are going every which way. And some of it seems like fans have been so conditioned to that, they just don't like it when the players get to say where they're going to go. That seems to bother them more than their teams, say, trading Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis. I don't know. I think I'd rather have a player decide he wants to move than somebody make a move like that.
Yeah, that one kind of throws everything out the window in terms of making sense. I think it's interesting because part of it, don't you think, Mike, is just adapting to change, because the NCAA has been almost draconian over its history in terms of restricting players' movement, players' scholarships. I mean, I remember Rick Majerus, the late great Rick Majerus, being threatened to be sanctioned by the NCAA because he bought pizza for his guys after a practice. It's how times have changed. But don't you think a lot of it is just that people are getting used to the idea of all of this movement and the compensation players are receiving for playing in college?
Yeah, I think generally, for the most part, fans have grown accustomed to the compensation and aren't really that bothered by it. I think you'd probably still have some old school folks who look at it and aren't going to be happy with any sort of change in that regard. But I think the thing that really gets them is the players having so much control, and it's certainly what makes the coach's job more difficult. In some ways, nearly an impossible job, because you already, as a college basketball coach, had a 70 to 100-hour work week for 8 to 9 months out of the year with recruiting and then coaching and all of the other things that they have to do. Then they add this on, and now that period extends basically to year-round when you're working that much. And so you see different coaches who have walked away from the sport. And I'm not talking about Mike Krzyzewski. He was 75 years old. I don't know why he gets lumped in with this. It's okay to retire when you're 75. And
that's not a bad thing.
How many millions of dollars. It's okay. You're allowed to do that. But some of the coaches who are not quite as old, who have walked away, and specifically cited the change, instead of saying, look, this job's gotten too hard and I've got a lot of money and it's not worth it anymore, they try to turn it back on, this is not what I signed up for, and all that sort of thing. And my response to that is, okay, well, here's the deal. You're a phenomenal basketball coach. If anybody who got the opportunity to play for you would be empowered, would be getting a tremendous experience. So go coach some other level. Go coach D3. They don't have this. Go coach high school. They don't have this much. As long as you're at a school district, they don't have much of this. And people are going to be flocking to your school district if they can play for you. But they don't do that. So I don't like the narrative that's spun, that part of it. Be honest about it. You've made $5 million a year for 10 years. That means that you've earned $50 million, which means that you're probably not going to ever need to earn another dime. And you don't want to spend all of your life working. That's okay. I totally get that.
I think that's a great set of points that you just made, is that it causes so many narratives to spin out of this change. And I think what's been the most difficult to digest, Mike, and it's still in the process, I think, of acclimating to the landscape, to the college basketball landscape, is just how many changes from so many directions have happened within a relatively short period of time. Add in now that junior colleges don't count against your 4-year eligibility. That's a very interesting change. So we're dealing with an evolution of a sport, and I think the evolution is not done yet, because now there's talk of players starting to consider suits about how many years they can play. Why can I only play 4 years? Why can't I play as many years as I want to now? Like, once you open that door, the slippery slope starts, and we're in the midst of that. So I can see all of this upheaval having real ramifications, and it would be tough to be a D1 coach and have all of this player movement taking place. But let's go to the players. Talk about the season. Give me your top 3 teams of the season that have been the most consistent and the most, I think, pleasing to you to watch this year as they get ready for March Madness.
Well, those are two different questions, because
yes, they are.
I haven't really had a lot of fun watching Duke because look at who they're playing. And I want to see Duke play really good teams and have to really work, because I think they're wonderful. But I don't want to see them win every game by 40. And I don't know, maybe they go into the NCAAs and win every game by 40, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to have some really difficult games, and I could certainly see them winning 6 games in a row but I don't think they're beating any of the SEC powers by 40 like they just destroyed Wake the other night. I think they're going to have to work really hard to win the NCAA championship. So although I really do enjoy watching Cooper Flagg, he's just a phenomenal talent and a pleasure to watch play because he understands the game and he loves the game and he plays the game like he loves it. And for that reason, I've really enjoyed watching him. But I want to see Duke play some real competition, and I'm looking forward to the NCAAs for that. I've enjoyed watching Auburn because they are such a together group. They are phenomenal at both ends of the floor. Janai Broome has had such a wonderful year coming from, and this is part of one of the things I like about the transfer thing. And we've seen players last year, Dalton Connect, come from almost literally nowhere to be a first-team All-American. And then you see someone like Janai Broome, who I watched 3 years ago play for Morehead State in the Ohio Valley Championship game and play very well, but he wasn't this player. He goes to Auburn, and all of a sudden it's a different deal. It's somebody who grows in the game and grows with the challenges, and I like that. I like seeing that. So those are some of the things that have been really a joy to watch. And then you watch Houston, and I don't know how much fun it is to watch Houston, but it's amazing.
They are
you
amazing.
Look at it like, okay, so if I can go see National Lampoon's Animal House and laugh, that's fun. That's not Houston. If I watch a movie like for instance, that I saw this year, The Substance, which was nominated for Best Picture, I mean, that's not always fun, but it's impressive. Some of the things that the filmmakers were able to do, both technically and with a story, it's not a lot of fun, but it's really amazing to watch. At least it was until the final 20 minutes, which went off the rails. But Houston's with their defense, they don't make it much fun, certainly not for the opposition, but they are amazingly together, beautifully coached. I think they love playing for their coach and playing together, and for that reason, they are a joy to watch.
You know, I watched Houston last weekend, and I agree with you. They are the nightmare team to play against. I mean, like you're saying, it's one thing to watch them. Can you imagine being out on the court having to play against a team that's that together, that in sync defensively, and really disciplined on offense? Like but they're a great team. How about the SEC this year, though? Mike, and I'm talking to Mike Decourcy from Sporting News here on the basketball show. The SEC this year, like some people have said something as lofty as that maybe the greatest basketball conference top to bottom in the history of the NCAA. That's pretty lofty, but I don't know that that's very far off.
I think it's important to sort of put a qualifier into that. And when I say that, I mean relative to its season. Like, we don't have Patrick Ewing and Chris Mullin in the same league anymore. That doesn't come up any longer. Patrick Ewing played 4 years at Georgetown. Chris Mullin played 4 years at St. John's. They're both Hall of Fame players and among the best college basketball players to ever play. And the Big East of 1985 had both of them. And we don't have that any longer. But we have leagues like this one that you look at them compared to the other conferences. And while the Big Ten is having a wonderful season with 10 or 11 NCAA tournament candidates, and the Big 12 is having a very fine season with 8 or 9, the SEC has 14 NCAA tournament candidates and will probably place 13 at minimum of them into the field. It's really amazing to watch. The competition is terrific every night. You don't really know, although they have 4 powerhouse teams that are contending for number 1 seeds. I think at this point Auburn is a lock in that level, and Florida's in great shape. You still have to finish the job, but then you have Tennessee and Florida. But even at that, you don't know who's going to win every night. Texas goes into Mississippi State, which has had a much better year, but Texas is desperate. Mississippi State maybe not playing for quite as much, and Texas goes out and takes them out. So you don't really know exactly what's going to happen, even in a league with the powerhouses they have.
You know, that really is marvelous. And to have that kind of urgency and that kind of tension in every game really is unusual. What adds to this landscape, and it ties into our earlier conversation, Mike, is the shift in conferences and how many teams now are in these power conferences that you're describing. I mean, the Big Ten is the Big 21. You know, the unthinkability of UCLA and USC playing in the Big Ten, Oregon is just it's incredible. Stanford out on the East Coast. I mean, it's really quite amazing to watch. But the alignment has led to some of the results that you just described, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, UCLA playing at Purdue and Illinois and some of the games that we had as a result of that. It's kind of fun. Michigan State going out to Southern California and playing out there and having to compete with those teams. It's led to a lot of fun. And on the women's side, you have UCLA and USC among the very best teams in the country. And the fact that their two games were so good, and the fact that they were branded as Big Ten games was good for the Big Ten. They lost Caitlin Clark after last year, and she was such an incredible draw and such an incredible player. And you turn around, and the next thing you know, Juju Watkins is in your league, and you don't miss Caitlin as much. You still have a phenomenal talent, a phenomenal draw, a very popular player, and you have UCLA and USC maybe competing for a national championship. Maybe even, who knows, maybe even against one another.
No, that's so true. Now, a final question for you, Mike. And I'm talking to Mike Decourcy from the Sporting News here on the Basketball Show. But the final question would be, Cooper Flagg, obviously, just emblazoned in everybody's minds about what he's going to mean at the end of this year, providing, of course, as we all don't think would ever have a snowball's chance of happening, him coming back to Duke. But Cooper Flagg, there's a lot of talk about this being such a deep draft this year. Who would the two players be after Cooper Flagg in the draft that you think would have the most impact coming out of college going to the league?
Well, Dylan Harper would be the first of those. He's a tremendous talent. He hasn't been able to impact winning in the way that he'd like. It's pretty obvious. But I do think he's going to be exceptional at the NBA level. I think that we've gone through the phase of people trying to manufacture other players, the idea that other players would be taken over Cooper Flagg. I think we've gotten to the point where now people who are just trying to make conversation, I'm not big on that. I say what I believe and I could be wrong about my opinions, but they're always based in logic and fact. And if you don't agree with me that Cooper Flagg is the best American basketball prospect since at least Anthony Davis, that's okay. We can have a debate about that. But if you think that someone in the NBA is going to take someone other than Cooper Flagg with the number one overall pick, you can't make a cogent case for that. Even with really good players like Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, no one who's get paid to do this for a living, and I don't mean what I do, I mean evaluating talent and putting it on your team. No one who's paid to do that for a living can look at Cooper Flagg and say, oh, I can find somebody better in this draft. Because there hasn't been anybody better in any draft probably for at least a decade. So, no, it's just not that simple. He does too many things well. He has so many things that he can bring to the sport. And when he gets to the NBA level and it's all he does and he plays with other pros, you're going to see someone who affects winning in every way that it can be affected.
Totally agree. Well summarized. And Mike, we're out of time for today, regrettably, but I really hope we can talk with each other as March Madness gets underway. And thanks so much for making the time today. I know you're really busy, so it was a real pleasure to have you on.
You bet, Paul. Anytime during the tournament, things sort of wind down a little bit because you don't have any work until the games start, as opposed to now when the work never stops. So please feel free to reach out.
I will do that, Mike. Enjoy March Madness. Mike Decourcy, Sporting News, joining us here on the Basketball Show. We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we're going to come back with the co-founder of the CEBL, Mr. Mike Morreale, here on Sports 1440.
From a place called Leho, folks.
One of the great whimsical songs of the last 40 years, Werewolves of London. Welcome back to the Basketball Show. I'm your host, Paul Sir. Along with Ryan Reed here on Sports 1440. You know what? The CEBL, the Canadian Elite Basketball League season, is just around the corner. And there have been some exciting announcements over the past few months, and one this past week dealing with ownership in the league. And who better to talk about what's going on in the CEBL than the co-founder of the league, Mike Morreale. Mike, thanks so much for joining us on the Basketball Show.
Well, thanks, guys. Pleasure to have you have me on.
So, Mike, talk about the big announcement this past week about the sale of it. I guess you would say the sale of the team or the purchase of the team out in the GTA. What took place and what significance does that have, in your opinion, on the CEBL?
Well, I think when you look back at our history and how we started and as a single entity, there always was that desire to, build this league to its highest and best value and then bring in the local owners as we have in Edmonton and in Winnipeg and Vancouver and in many other places to just really elevate those organizations in their own market. And we, under the original owner, Richard Petco, has done just an amazing job. Going into, this year, he still had 5 teams under his belt, and I was actively, searching for, proper ownership in a couple markets, specifically Montreal and Brampton, and I was just so fortunate that we found such great people to take them over and then continue to grow what Rich has developed. And, now I turn my attention to other markets like Ottawa and Saskatchewan, but bring in those independent owners, entrepreneurs, business people, connections to sport and media. It's all going to be great, not just for the local market, but for the CEBL itself.
Well, having been aware of and in my own small way involved in the CEBL since its beginnings, Mike, the growth obvious, the expansion obvious, the reach obvious, all good things moving, not always in sync, and no one knows that better than you, is that you are probably at the forefront of everybody out there trying to make sure that the landscape gets broader, bigger, more awareness built, and you've done a marvelous job of that. Now the league's expanded. Now the next step was to lengthen the season, and that has happened this year, hasn't it?
It has. That's a real reflection on the business and the growth of the business. When you first start, you have to be careful, I guess, in how many games you're playing and what your salary cap is and all the things that you just don't know. But as we've grown and matured and been successful, then all of those metrics that allow for that growth just lead towards decisions like adding more games. We're at a point in time where adding games is a good thing in our local markets. It's not a cost. It's a potential to be profitable and to play more basketball. We are constrained by, kind of the start of the season, the end of the season. We work as best we can within those parameters. So adding those games was fantastic, but also for those that have been paying attention or will see, when they look at our schedules, even the scheduling has gotten a lot better. Majority of games are Thursday through Sunday in home markets. Try to eliminate kind of the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday if we can. We can't always, but 75% of our games are Thursday through Sunday, and it's just better experience for the fans, better experience for everyone in the arena and the players and everyone involved.
Now, Mike, one concern that people have expressed is that because of the placement of the season, and it is a summer season that has worked extremely well because it's its own unique season where you're not competing with, let's say, traditional basketball in the same way, but always competition because there's so many sports everywhere globally. But one of the challenges and that I know aware of is that you're butting up against the European Canadians in particular, but players, Americans playing over in Europe, their season bleeding into the beginning of the season, but also the demand for the return to overseas clubs at the end of the season. How does the CBL view this challenge?
Well, I will say if you look at this year's schedule, it is identical to what we did in year one. So we kind of walked away from what we had built in year one and had to pivot because of, our year two was in a bubble, our year three was really not in front of fans. It was only a 14-game season. We slowly have crept back up. So we know the inherent risks. We've adjusted our salary cap a little bit differently and added some wrinkles to allow for maybe better player retention in certain parts of the year. And part of it is just a challenge that our GMs and coaches are going to have to face. It is a league that is transitional because we allow our players to go to summer league or to go to NBA tryouts. Those are really important, things, not only from my position, but when we're trying to attract players, they feel very comfortable knowing that the team in the league has their back and will allow them to continue to do or grow in their path. And they realize that if they can hit a NBA summer league, if that's what they're doing, or an NBA camp full steam playing competitive basketball, that is a benefit to them. We've seen, our players be able to take advantage of that, whether it's Jackson Rowe playing this year in Golden State or A.J. Lawson playing now at the Raptors or with the Mavs. And, of course, those are two Canadians, but all are Americans as well. So, there still are some wrinkles to be looked at, and we have to play this season to figure it out. I'm not too concerned about the front end of the season because there's always been a bit of hangover. The playoff or the players in the bigger leagues that are in the playoffs are likely coming into May, beginning of June. I think the real interesting thing, we'll see what the back end holds and the retention of our top players, because that's obviously important, very important. And there's going to be probably a little bit more reliance on a G League type player as well, whether they're Canadian or American, just because there is no overlap in those seasons.
For our listeners, Mike, talk about the required structure of the team in terms of how many Canadians, how many Americans are allowed on each franchise.
Yeah, so we have 14-man rosters, of which you can either have a 10 or 12-man active roster. And you have to have, you can only have 4 Americans on that active roster. So if you're playing with a 12-man roster, there's 8 Canadians. If you're playing with a 10-man, there's 6. So majority of teams will be 10, maybe 11-man, just because the FIBA game's a little bit shorter and you likely won't go that deep on your bench. So, it is still, and it, in my mind, will always be the predominantly Canadian league that was built for all the fundamental reasons as to why. So this league generally plays at above 70% Canadian talent, and we mandate that 2 Canadians start on the court at all time or are on the court at all time. And those of you that have watched our games, and I know you've been there since the beginning, Paul, so you can speak to it better than anybody. I mean, the separation between, a non-Canadian and a Canadian talent is hard to define.
Unrecognizable now.
Yeah, unrecognizable, exactly. And maybe in the beginning it took some time, but now it's, we've really attracted as many top Canadians as possible. And it's a real, amazing product that keeps getting better because of the talent on the court.
Absolutely. And for anybody that goes to a Stinger game, specifically in Edmonton or Surge down in Calgary, after you've been there, one of the things I always hear from people after they've gone, particularly for the first time, is, Mike, my God, I didn't know that there was this much good basketball to be played. I had no idea how good this would be. And Mike, I think one of the things that I admire the most about what your efforts, and of course the both financial and all the support that Richard Petco has offered to this league, the vision being to drive this and grow this league while still developing Canadian talent and ingraining the franchises into the community. It's really starting to bear fruit. And I can talk specifically in Edmonton because now it's very rare that I talk to anybody and they have no awareness of who the Edmonton Stingers are. And that is, I think, is a real tribute to you. Talk about the television now. With the expanded league, that must mean that there's expanded television coverage on TSN as well.
Yeah, we continue to grow our relationships on the broadcast side. TSN is going to carry 127 games this year, all live on the TSN Plus platform, and then 17 of those games, including all the playoffs and championship weekend, will be on the linear network, so on TSN 1 through 5. And then Game Plus, who just happens to be, the guy that runs Game Plus, or Anthem Sports Entertainment that runs it, is now our new owner of Brampton, who you mentioned earlier, Leonard Asper.
Yep.
So we'll have upwards of 50 or 60 games on their Game Plus channels or Game TV channels. And, of course, our own CBL Plus platform that goes all over the world, and their partners in the U.S. And it is, I think, I know for a fact that the broadcast piece is something we're really looking to continue to grow. We're in our final year of our agreements with TSN. And, even in the last 3 years since we started there, the landscape has changed in terms of broadcast and how people, continue to move towards platforms like Paramount Plus or Amazon Prime or Netflix or other streamers for live sports. And it's been pretty profound. So we're open to a bunch of different looks at it and just continue to grow and have more people see what we do.
Mike, when I'm at the Edmonton Stingers game getting ready for the broadcast, I look over and I often see Mike Morreale and I go, this guy's he has to be cloned, or he has identical twin or triplets, because I have no idea how you get to so many games. And then I'm watching something on TV and I see Morreale there. So I'm still convinced you're in two places at once. Okay, I'm going to give you, as we start to run out of time, but Mike, what's the most exciting aspect of the CEBL? Now, I'm giving you the floor with your salesman hat on. Tell our listeners why they need to get out and watch the CEBL.
It's just a tremendous level of entertainment on and off the court. I don't think there's a dull moment from the minute you walk in, a 2-hour window of our games, from the music to what happens on the big screens and around the arenas, and what happens on the court and the dunks and target score time, which inevitably leads to these fantastic finishes, almost guaranteed on a game-by-game basis, and the excitement and enthusiasm of being with members of your community and rallying around, your team. And I think that has really morphed over time. The CBL has become the team of that market, rather than people showing up and just trying to figure out who we are. Now they're Stingers fans. Now they're Sea Bears fans. Now they're Honey Badger fans. And that fandom is growing, and it makes for just a great environment with all those things wrapped up in one big bow.
Well done. Sold certainly to me, and I know to a lot of folks as well. Really excited about the upcoming CEBL season, Mike. Kudos and thanks to you, Richard Petco, and all the hardworking people in your head office, and all of the franchises around the country, as they have brought Canadian basketball, true professional basketball, to Canada. You have filled that vacuum admirably. So I really appreciate you making the time today, and look forward to talking to you again once the season gets started.
Well, much appreciated, Paul. You've been a great advocate of Canadian basketball in general, and I'm just thrilled that you give me the opportunity to talk about it.
Mike Morreale, co-founder of the CEBL, Canadian Elite Basketball League, joining us here on the Basketball Show. Folks, get your season tickets for the Edmonton Stingers. You will never regret it. It is the best value in town. The entertainment, as Mike pointed out, when you go to the game, you're going to be entertained, not just with the play on the court, but just the whole show. For the family, so accessible, so much fun. Hall D over in the Expo Center is a beautiful viewing facility. There's not a bad seat in the house. Get out, support the Stingers, make this the best year that we've ever had in Edmonton. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to talk with Tori Hill. She is the head coach of King's University here in Edmonton, just coming off a marvelous season. And we're going to talk about the season, what her career's been like, about women in sport, and many, many other things here on the Sports Leader, Sports 1440.